Detroit woman's deportation to Mexico. We introduced you to Maria Juarez last May, and that's when our One Detroit Bureau teamed up with Bridge Magazine to follow Maria's last-minute appeals to her deportation order. It's part of our ongoing effort to try and understand deportation and immigration processes better, and we're seeing changes as policies at the national level and to try to give you a look at the real people behind the numbers. Maria has now been in Mexico about 5 months, separated from her husband and her 2-year-old. So a few weeks ago, our reporters, Chastity Pratt Dawsey from Bridge Magazine and Bill Kabota from Detroit Public TV, went to Mexico to find Maria and see what her life is like now.
We're in Salvatierra in Guanajuato, Mexico, following the story of Maria Juarez, a 23-year-old who lived most of her life in the United States. The last time we saw her, she was being deported from the airport in Detroit about 4 months ago. And here in Mexico, she lives with extended family who she had never met before. Juarez agreed to meet us in the center of the city, 10 miles from the small town where she lives, a place she said 2 of her relatives died in recent months, victims of organized crime. She's still connected by cell phone to her husband and son David, who just turned 2. Juarez had always worked, even as a young mother. She'd taken some college classes in Michigan, but in Mexico, everything is on hold. What were your dreams when you were in Detroit, and what are your dreams now? Like, how has this whole thing changed you, or changed your dream, you know?
Well, I guess my dream hasn't changed. My dream is still to you know, get a career, to go to study.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that dream hasn't changed. Unfortunately, you know, it's a different circumstance being over here. But
you were saying when we were in Detroit that you were thinking you were studying human services. You wanted to be a social worker.
Yeah, I still want to help people.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely is. It did change coming here. Now here, I'm afraid to go outside, so I'm afraid to be out. I'm afraid to be here. You know. So it's, I guess the fear is stopping me from doing a lot of things that I know I could do here. I know that I could succeed here, but I'm scared to go outside. And how can you move? How could you do anything with your life if you're even scared to go outside your house?
Juarez has lived her entire adult life under threat of deportation because she was caught stealing a couple of cars as a minor in California. She appears to have lived an exemplary life since. She is still working with a lawyer trying to return to Detroit. It could take a year, or it could take 10. After we interviewed her, we took her back to her family's home, and we found out very quickly why she's afraid to live here.
¿Qué encontraron?
It was along the only road leading into Maria's town. We were just driving down the street, and we happened to cross this crime scene. We even got here before the police got here, and there's a dead body over there. It looks like it's probably wrapped up in something. This is a really rural area, but it's clearly cartel land. There's some stuff going on.
3 months.
3 months.
3 months. Yeah, it's a 140, 140.
3 months in this municipality. And this is the second
Yeah,
one
only in
today.
this area. Yeah. You can look at that. I have a lot of pictures.
From today, or just from the last 3 months?
Yeah, 3 months.
What?
Usually they get to a guy, like has some information, they take to this person to a secure house, and in that place they interrogate that person. And they torture the person, and after that they just kill him. And they put him into like a bed sheet, and they kind of roll him. And they just, after that, they just bring the body and just dump it here.
This is exactly what I was talking about.
What do you mean?
It's dangerous. This is what the United States sent me to. You don't say this stuff over there. It's just, it's very scary.
With me now is Detroit Public TV reporter and producer from our One Detroit Bureau, Bill Kabota. It's good to see you, Bill. And Bridge Magazine reporter Chastity Pratt Dawsey. Welcome back, Chastity. It's good to see you as well. You know, when we look at that piece that you did and the visiting that you did with Maria, I'm going to start with you first, Chastity. When you decided to go back to Mexico and to find what Maria's life is like now, what were your expectations, and then what was the reality of what you found and how she was living?
I think that I pretty much expected her to be, you know, what she was, afraid. I'd been talking to her for weeks, and she'd been saying she was staying in the house and not going out much. And, you know, we do our backs, you know, reporting to see what's really going on in the region. Should she be this afraid? Is there that much crime there? So I expected there to be some level of fear and some level of reason for her to be afraid. But the reality was, when I got there, I wasn't prepared to, number one, come across a dead body on the side of the road. I wasn't prepared for the stories that she and the officials were saying about just how bad the cartel gang warfare is affecting regular folks. And honestly, I think what really surprised me is when we first saw her in the park, she walked up to us and she had tears in her eyes. And I was just like, what is that about? She was just so happy to see us because we were from Detroit.
There was a connection. Yeah, there was a connection there.
I mean, she literally had tears in her eyes, and I definitely wasn't prepared for that.
Bill, when you talk to her about what life is like now, I think that's also some of the things that people don't think about when you say, well, someone's been deported, they're going back to where they came from, but she hadn't been there since she was 8 months old. Is she working now? Who is she living with? What's really her day-to-day existence?
She's living with an uncle in a kind of a really small town, and the day-to-day, we saw the house, and it looks like a house, but it's really not the same sort of thing. They got plumbing issues, just all the things that are a struggle, that are things that we don't usually think about, you know, doing the laundry, just drinking the water, you know, things like that. You can't really do it the same way we do it here, and I think that was a big shock to the system, and I think that happens to a lot of people that go back, that didn't really grow up with that.
You know, you talk, Chastity, about the connection and you know, and seeing you guys and connecting to her life back here in Detroit. What is her connection now with her family? She has this little boy, she has a husband, and she has other people in her life back here. What is her hope or her thought that she could eventually come back to the U.S.?
Well, her connection is one of, she's now has a different role in her family. She's the one who had to leave. She's on the outside looking into their lives literally through a cell phone FaceTime window. And she could get a waiver of her 10-year ban if, you know, but there's no guarantee. She would have to apply and say, my removal is causing a huge hardship to my husband who has leukemia and he's trying to raise our son alone. So she could apply for a waiver based on that. But that could take a year or more, and there's no guarantee, especially now with all of the deportations and apprehensions that we're seeing from the Trump administration, you know, related to all immigrants, especially those from Central and South America.
Bill, let me ask you, I mean, it wasn't just Maria's story when you went down to Mexico. You encountered a lot of other people talking about what life is like there and looking to maybe come to the U.S. and the dreamers in reverse, I think you also termed it as. What was that like in tracking down some of those people as well?
Well, we met another Detroiter, or maybe former Detroiter, and he moved down to another small town, and his father lived there. His father actually spent time in Detroit as an undocumented resident as well, but had a divorce and then moved down back to Mexico. And this guy, Jose, he was deported, and just recently, a few months ago, and now was living with his father. And same sort of thing, you know, they miss it here, but I guess you have to put yourself in the idea that you're just being forced to leave your house. What are you going to do? But he's kind of adjusting. He's meeting his new neighbors, but he too is discovering that this is a different kind of life altogether than what he grew up with here.
You really get a sense of why their families fled those cities, those towns in the first place, because obviously the quality of life. Jose lives in a nice little home at the warehouse where he works with his dad, but he opened the gate behind their house and it was Save the Children. I mean, I have choked up twice in my life on assignment, and that was one of them. It was bad.
You know, I do want to ask you about that, the impact of telling a story like this, and kind of where do you go here? I mean, is this story over for both of you, or where does it go? Where do we take it from here?
Well, Bill, working on a documentary, right?
We think we'll have something, a half-an-hour program we're going to work, and probably a national PBS type of program. I think we'll have to be doing more follow-up on some specific stories, and a look more at Detroit specifically. There's a whole south of Detroit, and maybe statewide, there's what, 6,000 or more people that are dreamers.
Yeah, this is just one or two stories that we're looking at of many people.
Yeah, it has a connection to a national story about the dreamers. This is what they could face.
Where do you want to take it from here, Chastity?
I think from here we have to follow it through to see what happens March 2nd, to see, you know, if people like Maria and Jose, young adults who are raised in America, actually are forced to leave the country because DACA is actually going to be no more. So we watch it, we do the documentary, the full documentary on Maria, and circle back around on March 5th and see just how much that impacts people if, you know, DACA actually is allowed to expire.
Yeah, we keep telling the stories, and I appreciate both of your work. If you'd like to see all of our stories about Maria and our ongoing coverage about immigration issues and policies from One Detroit, just head to our website at MiWeek.org. Our thanks to Bill and Chastity.